What I'm trying to argue in the presentation today is that we're missing a big part of EU's trade policy by not looking more in depth into non-tariff issues. So in principle, negotiations so far have been really focused on tariff liberalization, but more and more we've started talking about regulatory issues, non-tariff barriers, issues such as public procurement, and they completely change the way that free trade agreements are negotiated in the first place, not only in the EU, but across the world. I start by looking only into the European Union, in particular the dynamics between the European Commission and the Council of Ministers through the Trade Policy Committee. And by looking into the dynamics between the two institutions, I also try to look at the opportunities for inclusion and exclusion of civil society actors. So while there are a lot more institutionalized ways for businesses to participate in and provide input to free trade agreements, it's obvious that when it comes to the day-to-day policy making, it's harder for civil society organizations to find their place in the institutional context. And actually, free trade agreements provide a very good opportunity for that, because they can engage with specific issues, try to build capacity across the board, try to bring more information to policymakers. And that's important because that balances out the information that the Commission receives from business organizations. In that sense, non-tariff barriers are very important because they could constitute also legitimate measures in target countries. Where business information is really crucial is to monitor what's happening in different markets and to provide that information to the Commission. What civil society can do is to do the same, monitor the situation, monitor the implementation of free trade agreements, and then feed that information to the Commission. So in that sense, civil society could get involved in the different stages. It could feed into the preparation of the negotiations, feed across through the civil society dialogue, bilateral meetings, and other ways to feed into the negotiations, but also when it comes to implementation and monitoring. What I'm further arguing is that this should also be done at the level of member states, because member states are supposed to take bigger ownership of the effects of free trade and globalization on their countries and on their markets and the people. And one way for civil society to have even bigger impact is to try to do that at the sub-European level. So member states, regions, but even local authorities try to promote the causes that are important and try to give that variability to the information that the Commission needs to know. So further, what I'm trying to look at is also how the European Commission tries to balance between the internal market and external liberalization. It has become a lot more contested across member states. What is actually the purpose of trade policy? What are we trying to achieve with this? And there is an ongoing discussion between member states, members of the European Parliament, civil society, and the Commission in Brussels that actively engage with how free trade agreements in future agreements should look like. Regulatory cooperation is a big part of that. Regulatory cooperation in TTIP has been heavily contested and made voluntary in the agreement with Canada, CETA. And CETA could definitely serve as a template for future agreements, because it provides both an opportunity for regulators and for different members of society to engage further on regulatory cooperation, but it is voluntary. So it doesn't provide very stringent templates on what should be done. This to some extent decreases the power of trade policy objectives over other objectives, because then the participants in these regulatory committees and in these engagements can shape the objectives of what they're trying to achieve in the first place.